on the brain. The one that's directly on the brain tissue is called the pia mater, and the pia mater is what holds all of these, the gyri and the sulci. The gyri are the bumps, the sulci are the grooves. So the pia mater is what actually holds all that stuff together, so it doesn't all flop apart. Okay. On top of that is the arachnoid mater. Arachnoid, like a spider web. It's a thin membrane. And then on top of that, the outermost membrane is called the dura mater. It's a really thick, white, tough membrane, and that holds your brain up to your skull. Okay? Major features here. First, this region here is the cerebrum. This is the longitudinal fissure that separates your brain into right and left sides. This is the cerebellum. This is the transverse fissure between the cerebrum and the cerebellum. This is your spinal cord. If we turn this over, again, here's the spinal cord. This first enlargement right on top of the spinal cord is the medulla oblongata. These bumps right here is the pons. These two columns coming up on top of the pons are called the peduncles. Okay. This little bump right in here is called the mammillary body, little booby right there. Okay, that is the central canal. Up here is where the optic nerves come in. They've been cut really close here and here, but your optic nerves would come in from this side, would come in and go out this way. From the other side, it would come in this way, right? Because the nerves from the right eye go to the left side of the brain, the left eye go to the right side of the brain. So where they cross over is the optic chiasma. Hold on a second. Hey guys, back there, please. You got to keep it down because they can't hear what I'm saying. Okay, so that's called the optic chiasma. Okay, now they want you to look at some nerves here. Up at the top, we have the olfactory bulbs. And coming out of the olfactory bulbs, we have these white tracts here. These are the olfactory nerves. Okay, so all those nerves from your nose coming in. Okay, if we come down here on the peduncles, and these are pairs. There's pairs of these. There's supposed to be pairs of these anyway. On the peduncle, we have this rather large flat nerve. That's called the oculomotor nerve. Coming down here on the side, we have this little bitty thing right here, this little white thing right there. You see that? You see that over there? Okay. That little white nerve right there, that's the trochlear nerve, the one that's on the side. This right here is what's left of a trigeminal nerve. The trigeminal nerves are the biggest, broadest of the nerves because there's actually 3 nerve trunks that come from that same region. So that's trigeminal. The one that you seem to be missing is the adducens nerve, which is a little nerve that comes right up here onto the pons, which seems to be missing in this particular one. And then these nerves down here are spinal accessory nerves down on the spine. Okay? So olfactory bulb, olfactory tract, optic tracts, optic chiasma, ocular motor, trochlear, that little white one in there, trigeminal, and you're missing the adducens, which would be little white nerves coming up here. And then these would be the spinal accessory nerves. Okay? If we look at a section of the brain, so now I've cut it along that longitudinal fissure, and we can look at the inside. This is cerebrum here. This is the cerebellum, the arborvitae, the tree of life. Okay. This white band right here is called the corpus callosum, and that is a band of nerve tracts that run back and forth on either side of your brain. This end up here is called the genu. This end down here is the splenium. Septum pellucidum is actually this area right in here. Oops, that's right in there. That actually it's a septum. It separates the right and left halves of this space right here, which is called the lateral ventricle. This big space. A ventricle is an open space in the brain, and it's filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so this big space right here is the lateral ventricle. The floor of the lateral ventricle right here is called the fornix. And if we kind of push that up a little bit, there is another ventricle right here underneath. That's the third ventricle. And this red gooey stuff right here coming out of that is actually choroid plexus. That's what actually produces the cerebrospinal fluid in the third ventricle. So we should tuck that back in there where it goes, like that. Okay? So the cerebrospinal fluid is made here. It fills up this space. It comes via the cerebral aqueduct, which is just a little river that runs right down here. And then there's another it's hard to see in the brain that's been split, but there's another ventricle under here, under the cerebellum. That's the fourth ventricle. It collects there, and the cerebrospinal fluid goes down the spinal column. Okay, so lateral ventricle, third ventricle, cerebral aqueduct coming down, fourth ventricle, down to the spine. Okay? This round area right here is the thalamus. This area just below it here is the hypothalamus. And then if the pituitary were still attached, it would be hanging down here. Okay, but the pituitary is, again, when you take that piece of tissue off here, it pulls it right off. Okay, and then if we pull this down again, we can see here's our butt cheek again, right? Superior collicula. Did we do that?
We didn't do it on that one, though.
Okay. Let's just take a look at this one. Yep, if I pull this down, oh yeah, but your pineal gland is way back in here. If I just pull this down a little bit, you see the butt cheek back there? Right? If you look real close, I have to pull it down maybe a little more, open it up a little. There's a little bump that sits right on top of the butt. Can you see it back in there deep? Right? Can you see that? That's the pineal gland that's sitting on top of the butt. Okay? The big butt cheeks right here are the superior colliculi. The little ones underneath are the inferior colliculi. Okay? So again, if we take our half brain and we pull it down, okay, here's our superior colliculi, here's our inferior colliculi, and then this sticking up in the back would be the pineal gland. Okay? Just a different view. Okay, so lateral ventricle, third ventricle, fourth ventricle, the aqueduct comes around. This is the thalamus, this is the hypothalamus, that's the pineal gland right there. Okay, corpus callosum, the genu is at this end, the septum pellucidum is here, the splenium is this end, the floor of that ventricle is called the cornix. Underneath there is the third ventricle, and in that third ventricle is that gooey red stuff. That's the choroid plexus. Okay? Okay. We're also going to ask you to look at this thing. So this is a spinal cord model. You need to be able to tell anterior, posterior. So you look here, these big bumps. These are called ganglia. These are masses of nerve cell bodies. These are dorsal root ganglia. So this is on the dorsal side. Okay, so these are the dorsal nerves coming in. These are the ventral nerves here. Okay, this is the gray matter, the butterfly. So these would be the dorsal roots of the gray matter, the ventral roots of the gray matter. The bridge in between is called the gray commissure. And then that hole right there is the central canal. This would be the ventral median fissure right here on the ventral side. Okay, so if we look at this cross section of the spine, this is all white matter again, and then this is the gray matter. Okay, this picture is in your text. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Yep.